We hope you enjoy this episode recorded live at Microsoft Ignite 2019. The event organizers are giving you a chance to win one of 10 Surface earbuds just for listening to this recording. To be in the chance to win, visit aka.ms/msignite/podcast sweepstakes and complete your details. Don't forget to mention you heard about this contest on the coffee chat on 365 Adoption. For full terms and conditions, visit aka.ms/msignite/podcast sweepstakes. Entries close at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time in the U.S. on December 15th, 2019. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of the Coffee Chat on 365 Adoption.
That's right, Daniel.
I'm Daniel Glenn, and this is
Sarah Haase.
We are in Orlando.
Sunny, warm Orlando.
Yes, we are here for the Microsoft Ignite conference, and we're having a great time with networking and learning. I am. Are you?
Yes, 30,000 of our closest friends all here.
Yes.
You can hear some of them around you as we're
Yes.
sitting in the podcast center.
That's right. And we have our coffee. So, today, though, we have this episode of the Coffee Chat on 365 Adoption is all about, well, the title is It Takes a Village. What does that mean, Sarah? What do we mean by it takes a village?
Right, so we're really going to be talking about how a community, an internal community, and supporting one another is so important as we think about our user adoption journey for Office 365, Microsoft 365, SharePoint on-prem, and how we really need to support one another. Because quite frankly, there's too many choices, too many technologies, too many things to learn, and too many ways to implement it for one of us to be all things, right?
Okay.
So we need to support one another along the journey, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how we can take a village-based approach.
So this really came from an old saying, I think it's an African saying about it takes a village, meaning it, and I think originally it referred to raising a child, it takes a village, but that's what that means, is it's not just one input, it's multiple inputs into this adoption journey.
Right. Multiple inputs, multiple types of personalities, technical capabilities, really a diverse and inclusive way of connecting with people and helping ourselves along on the journey.
So my first question to you, though, is I think we kind of need to define some of these terms. What do we mean by a village or a community? I mean, what do you define that as?
Right. So what's great about Ignite this week is that I've been able to go to several sessions about what is a community. And ultimately, communities are very diverse. They're generally, and they can be very formal, or they can be highly informal, but they're really a grouping of two or more people who come together to share in learning, share in experiences, and in this case around Office 365 is what we're focusing on. So I've worked at companies, very large companies, where we have communities and they're called user groups, and we have very specific things like open office hours or ask the expert sessions, maybe user group meetings. That's on the more formal side. We certainly have community events, SharePoint Saturday events like SharePoint Saturday Twin Cities and SharePoint Saturday Nashville, Cloud Saturday events that we're involved in as well. But it can also be more narrow than that. You could lead a focus group at work to talk about a specific area of Office 365. You could have user surveys. You could do one-on-one job shadowing, and that's all part of that community. So it can have a pretty wide depth and breadth in terms of what that community means, but it's really all, in the end, it's all about supporting one another in our growth.
Okay. And I think you talked about diversity in that community, and I think that's, for us to grow, we need the opportunity to hear from others that are not like us, but in our experiences and our backgrounds, but also we need to hear from multiple points of view. So it's not just one person that's different, that has different background than us. It's multiple people, and getting inputs to help us grow, because it may be that we're coming at it from whatever the challenge is, or whatever we're learning, we're coming at it from maybe not the most optimal way. So what do you think would make up a great community? What is what is a community?
Right.
And what are the characters maybe in an adoption community
Right.
that we can use?
So I think we need a variety, and I'm going to start at the most base level. We need a variety of technical and interpersonal and problem-solving skills, right? If everyone were the same level of technical depth, then we might have less interesting discussions, quite frankly.
Okay.
You and I have interesting discussions on part of this coffee chat because, in fact, we actually come from very different backgrounds, have very different ways of viewing the same feature, the same concept. And it's in that diversity of thought that we actually have some really interesting conversations and can learn from one another.
Right.
So when I tend to break down the types of people that make up communities in many organizations that I've worked for, I have kind of 6 key characters, as I like to call them, that really break down sort of the types of users that I see at my organization that can form a community of sorts.
What's the first one?
The first one, enthusiasts. These are the excited folks. These are the people who are really, they're keen, they're excited about learning new things about Office 365, and they can't wait to learn more. They're going to spend their time studying about it. They want to play with it. They want to get their hands on it, and they can't wait to tell everyone about the great new thing that they found. Highly enthusiastic.
Okay. What's the second one?
Second one, cowboys. Cowboys are great. They can cover a lot of distance very quickly. They tend to be great at figuring out new features and capabilities. They also tend to say, don't hold me in. I don't want fences, so go ahead and give me full administrative privileges and I'll be fine. I'll figure it out and I will never come back to you with another question again, because all I really want is the ability to explore at will.
Okay. What is the third, Sarah?
Third one is the ninjas. Your ninjas are going to be, I call them the white hats in your environment. These are the people that are focused on learning. They also tend to be focused on best practices. They tend to have a, not always a governance lens or view, but they tend to think about others and their learning. And they're happiest when they're educating others about what they have learned. So they are the ones who will freely share and teach out, hey, I figured out this cool new feature. Let me show you how it works.
Okay.
Let me help mentor you through the process of figuring out how it works. Those are our ninjas.
Gotcha. And the fourth category of users?
The fourth category, very important for building a community, is what I call the tumblers. And tumblers is a word that most people are not familiar with.
Okay. What's a tumbler?
It is a Yiddish word that means to move about. And the idea behind a tumbler is they're sort of like the social director behind our communities. They're the people who get people excited. They're the ones who can get up in front of a group of people, whether it's at a focus group, whether it's at a small group discussion chat about Office 365 or a user group meeting, but they're going to get people excited. They tend to be energetic. They tend to really build connections with other people very well.
Okay. Fifth. What's the fifth
Number
group?
5 are the stragglers. We all have them.
Yes, we do. Yes.
These are the people that, from an Office 365 perspective, they tend to cling to their file shares or their 3-ring binders of information that they like to print off 3-hole punch and secure so that they know exactly where it is. So our stragglers are typically going to be in a situation where maybe they need a little bit of extra coaching or some extra encouragement to want to look at those new features. On occasion, they could just be people who don't like learning new technology or who say, I don't have time, or they say, I want to make sure I'm going to let other people go first. I'm going to let them figure out the kinks, and then I'll get into it when, they've worked out all of those things, and it seems like it's something that's solid.
So I'm listening to you, Sarah, and you've talked about 5 of the 6, and there's a group that I think you're missing, so I'm hoping it's number 6. So please tell me number 6 is all about those people that just, I don't want to do it.
They are the ones who say, no, thank you. So group number 6 is always the naysayers, right? And the naysayers are those that are just not interested in what it is that we're trying to sell. And that could be for a variety of reasons. They could just be not into Microsoft products. They could be developers at heart who want to build everything from scratch. They could love open source capabilities for everything. Or they could just say, I have other things that I care to do with my time. This is not where I want to focus my efforts. Naysayers are very interesting. I oftentimes, and I've got a great blog post on this, but I oftentimes find that as Office 365 practitioners, we are willing to spend an awful lot of time convincing a naysayer that Office 365 has innate value for them. And the reality is that if you can focus on your enthusiasts, if you can focus on some of the, on your ninjas, even on your cowboys, if you can focus on those people that want to learn Office 365, focus on those audiences first. Don't go after the naysayers, because usually they're the ones that are continually moving the requirements down the road or pushing it out because they're really not interested in the platform. So let's invest in those that are.
So, and I think that leads us into the thought or the concept of you really shouldn't treat in general, you should not treat your users the same. You're going to have to treat them differently. So for naysayers, whether sometimes naysayers are in leadership, and sometimes they're your coworker, your peers, but being able to treating them differently than you would a ninja or a cowboy, because frankly, I've had experience with all of this kind of personas that you're talking about, and oftentimes, like for the naysayers, you spend so much time and energy, and you don't get as much effect or any at all.
Correct.
When you could spend that energy and time in different ways with others to actually make progress to whatever goal you're having.
And
we're talking about adoption here,
right.
So that's what we're talking about.
That is such a good point, because naysayers oftentimes end up being very influential people. They are highly intelligent. They tend to be people that other people listen to, and we think, hey, if we can convince them that Office 365 has some great features, that they'll be great evangelists for the platform. And they might be someday, but if they're clearly exhibiting behaviors that say that they're not interested right now, then they're not interested in right now, and let's take them at their word that right now is not that time.
Right.
And if we overly focus on them while we have enthusiasts waiting for us to engage with them, the opportunity cost is too large. So we really should be focusing on those that are interested, that want to hear the message, and are interested in investing right now. And sometimes those naysayers will come back around later.
And so we talked about what a community is. We talked about the kind of personas that people play in that community, and so you touched on it a little bit, but focusing on what your community needs or what your group needs for this role, these characters in your community to support. Right. We're talking about adoption here, and so it's what do we need to help our users take adoption, adopt our technology that we're trying to help them with their job.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned user groups and such, but what are some others that helps us get everybody together with that community so they can help each other?
Right.
No matter what persona they are.
It could be anything from having formal user group meetings to scheduling
inside the company.
Inside the company.
Right, and we've talked a little bit about that.
To hosting demos, we've talked about that in other events. I love having coffee chats, clearly. So even being able to get 2 or 3 or 4 people together to sit down, even once a month or every couple of weeks, to be able to talk about something new that they built in Office 365 can be highly effective. One-on-one mentoring or coaching, or even building things together. So getting into a conference room and trying to build a solution together can be great. Most important thing, and you mentioned it before and we didn't really, and I want to go back and talk about it a little bit, is that not every company is the same. So we have to think about the culture of the organization. We've talked about that a lot in previous episodes, but also we have to realize that our users are unique, and the users of the different Office 365 capabilities are unique. So when I'm looking at driving user adoption for Yammer versus driving user adoption for Flow or OneDrive, the same user adoption approach and the same it takes a village approach needs to be tweaked given the company, the culture, the product, the use case, and the users themselves.
Gotcha. So how do you build this community, and what's the structure of a community?
Right.
What is it that for this community, how do you structure a community? Do you need any community has people playing certain roles, right? It's not everybody, does the same thing because it's a community. That's the whole point.
Right.
So what kind of roles do you see in the community helping to support these initiatives that's pushing people toward adoption?
Right. So we talked about at the beginning that there is a huge continuum when we're talking about community and what that could mean. From a highly structured and formal community where you have formal user group meetings every month, you have maybe you have office hours, you have the ability for people to sign up for one-on-one mentoring, you have a highly engaged and practical schedule, right? Your meetings are the second Thursday of every month from 9 until 11 in the morning. Everybody knows it, right?
Yeah.
They can plan their vacations around it if they choose to. That's on one end of the spectrum, all the way down to the other end of the spectrum where it's entirely grassroots and it's users getting together to be able to just talk around the water cooler about things that they built and things that they enjoy. I think that you really need to think about what are the desired outcomes and what's the culture of your organization and your company. And I would encourage you to start small first and then think bigger. We don't need to overbake the idea. We don't need to be overly formal about our community and our village to start with. But keep in mind what kind of company that you're working for. I've started communities or user groups at varying companies, and they all are very different because the companies themselves are very different. Some of them are geographically dispersed, so I need to allow for online communities of practice much more than I do in in-person community that meets in a room in a building once a month. So ultimately, you can decide who is going to lead it. What area of the organization it comes from is interesting. I know you've seen clients where it comes from all different areas of the company.
Yeah, well, because oftentimes you will get initiatives from IT because they want to implement a technology, and so, but as well, I say oftentimes, they don't, however, know how to go about creating adoption. You have, from the other side, you have or sometimes an organization from, whether it's marketing or it's HR and communications, they want people to use it, but they don't really know the technology that well. They just know that they need a better tool to do communications, for instance, or getting people to feel belonging in the company. So it can come from different, and back to your point, it needs to come from different areas. You need to have IT or people that know the technology, people who have a passion for your organization and for getting things done. And then some change people, people who are okay with change and okay with helping others go through change. Because we're talking about adoption, meaning taking on something new, and you're going to need some people who can help others through this change, because change is never easy. It is something that you have to work at, and it can be difficult. So for communities, I feel like there needs to be kind of some ground rules or maybe some guidance on how do we go from, we know there's an objective, we know there's a need, we know we have these personas, we know we have the people to do it, but how do we do it, right? So some guidelines or principles or something.
I agree. I think it depends on how structured, formal to informal of a community that you're running. Sometimes we don't even know that we're building a community. We're just connecting with other people that like Office 365. So we don't need to be very formal about it. But if you get to the point where you're running a user group or you're running a formal community in your organization that's predictable in how it engages your other users, you're going to want to be you're going to want to be open and transparent with how that works, right? So some examples that we often talk about, right? Do you need to define a purpose for what your outcomes are trying to be? And some people actually call that, if we want to get really fancy, right? An ethos, or what are the principles? What's your mission statement about what it is that you want to be?
Yeah.
In some companies, they might actually have a code of conduct. I don't know if your companies have done that before. I've never needed to at the companies that I'm at when I'm building internal communities that are related to SharePoint and Office 365.
I think most of the time you can incorporate the corporate, the company's code of conduct along with, this is technology we're talking about, so a technology code of conduct about, remember we know who you are, and don't be posting things that are inappropriate. Along with, hey, we're inclusive. We're here to do good. We're not here to create something that's negative.
Right.
Those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the most important things that I think you need to think about is being diverse in who you're appealing to, who you're incorporating, and who has the opportunity to participate. I think that it is so important, and it's something that I think that they've done a great job here at Ignite, is to really make sure that we're being observant and making sure that we're not leaving people off on the fringes. Because, it comes out in big ways and small ways, but if you're going to be having any kind of a meeting, if someone walks into that meeting and tries to connect and say hello to someone and no one talks to them during that meeting, that's not necessarily going to be a great connection. So I think we need to think about how we can do that. And this whole idea of be a U and not a circle, I think is important, right? Because if we think about a circle, it seems great in the fact that everybody's standing around and everyone can talk. But a circle is closed, and it can be hard to break into that circle. If we focus on being a you instead, then there's always an open slot where somebody can come in and join the conversation, and you just expand the shape of the you.
I think it's so good that you said, and you pointed that out, as to the fact that we often think of our teams needing to be diverse, whether it's generation, gender, backgrounds. We often think about those needing to be diverse because we want to make the best product possible. But it really is, what are you making this product for? Remember, you're delivering to a diverse crowd too.
Right.
And so it's not just be diverse so that you have that ability to bring in all of that wonderful culture and wonderful knowledge, but you're giving it out. So remember, the people that are consuming, that are going to be going through your adoption programs, your activities, your conversations that you're having, are diverse as well.
Absolutely, and that everyone can bring an enrichment to the experience. And I think that, and again, to highlight some of the things that have been great about here at Ignite, we've been talking about every kind of diversity and inclusion. I think that the neurodiversity sessions have been fantastic that they've been having here. So I really think it's important to think everybody thinks and learns differently. There are visual learners, there are kinesthetic learners. I think that those are people who are tactile, who learn by doing. There are people who learn by literally hearing and seeing presentations, and that we have to think about being able to connect with all of those people in the manner in which they learn and communicate best.
Right. So, okay. How do we get started? I'm thinking big, like trumpets and a big stage and confetti and a huge band.
I always wanted one of those t-shirt cannons.
Yes, right?
I always wanted one of those.
So we need to start big, right? It's going to be an adoption program. We're throwing t-shirts out, right?
I think it's more important to be agile. So I think that we need to make sure that, here's the thing, having a big splash I think is great. It's great to announce something. We're going to start up something new and we're going to try it out and it's going to be great. I started user groups and companies before where I've gone out and had 3 to 4 weeks of messaging. Here's going to be our first meeting. And I've had 200 people at the first meeting, and that's fantastic. But we have to keep in mind that we need to be agile. We need to be able to learn as we go, and that it isn't about the first step. It's about the end result. And so it's always going to be a journey. And that we need to really, it's about engaging people. It's about building connections with people. And that's so much more important than, unfortunately, the t-shirt cannon, because that would be cool.
Well, and I think a lot of, I've been on projects where it's, okay, let's come up with very toward the beginning of the project. Let's think about all of the ways we're going to help people adopt this thing that we're doing, whether it's an intranet or whatever. And so we start having the conversations about all the wonderful signs and banners and emails and do we buy the team t-shirts, all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, but that's good to think about, and I'm not saying you shouldn't think about some things, but let's make sure it fits with not only the company culture, but what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, if you're rolling out, you're trying to help people understand this, something like Outlook, and the new version of Outlook because you're going from 2013 up or something like. just picking something. I'm not entirely sure all of that is needed
Right.
for an email client. Now, Outlook's amazing, and people that know me know that I love Outlook, but something like that. But you're making a big splash with a technology that's different.
Right.
You might do that in a different way, like something like Teams. It may be that, hey, we've got a new tool that does a lot of stuff that we don't do right now, and we need to have a lot of advertisements and helping people understand what it is and
Right.
giving those activities for adoption.
And part of the challenge is often that if we set up these big expectations to make a big splash, it also means that the bar of what we're trying to achieve straight out of the gate can be too big, right?
Yeah.
And then what if we don't meet that? So, and there are a lot of people here at Ignite that I've talked to that they might be a department of one at their company.
Mm-hmm.
They might not even have the ability to do a community. And we've talked a lot about internal communities, but let's keep in mind, these can be big communities. They could also be a one-to-one relationship, and having someone that you can just have a dialogue with, that's
Right.
also a community.
Right.
They can be inside your organization and they can be outside your organization. One of the things I think we touched on the very first podcast episode that we ever did is that if you're at a conference and you have the great opportunity to be able to network and meet some people who you can learn from and can learn from you, set up a once a month virtual coffee chat or a virtual meeting. Ideally, if you can see them on video, even better, where you can just have a dialogue. That's a community. And you don't have to have a special title or a special permission to be able to start that up, either between companies with people in the greater Microsoft ecosystem as customers, and you don't need it in your company either. So don't wait for somebody to tell you that it's okay or add it to your job description. Invest, start small, and then build from there.
That's great, and I really think that everyone who's watching this, if you don't think you have a community, then make your own, and find where people who in your organization that have an interest in what you have an interest in, or they have an interest in learning more.
Right.
Then get together.
Right.
Now, and just as Sarah said, if you don't have anybody in your organization, like you're an IT department of one, or even if you have hundreds but you just can't find that community, then reach out to others in the area around you, geographic area, so that you can have, participate in user groups and conferences, mini conferences like SharePoint Saturdays and Cloud Fridays or Cloud Saturdays, as well as, remember, there's virtual groups. So even if you can't find a local group, you can be part of a global community, a bigger community that can help you get started at least, and help you support you along the way. I know I would be happy to help, and I know Sarah would too. There's a mentorship program that Microsoft has for humans of IT.
Humans of IT, yes.
I am signed up to be a mentor, so if you really would like to get involved with the community and help build a community in your organization, I would love to help you, and I know Sarah would too, right?
That's right. I'm signed up on Humans of IT as well. And it's so important, because if you don't have a community, it isn't so much if you don't have one, get one, but if you don't have one, please look around for opportunities to become engaged with one. And remember, a community doesn't have to be 50 people or 100 people. It can be 2, and it can be 3, and it can be 4.
Yep. All right, I think we've covered It Takes a Village, right?
It does.
Yes, it does take a village. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of the Coffee Chat on 365 Adoption. Sarah, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Ooh, they can find me at blog.splibrarian.com or on Twitter at Sarah Haase. And I know that you're going to put all of those words on the bottom of the screen.
I am. And I'm Daniel Glenn. You can find me on Twitter at Daniel Glenn or at danielglenn.com. And of course, we both blog for regarding365.com.
Do you want to tell them the URL to be able to get to all of our Coffee Chat episodes?
Actually, I would love to, Sarah. You can get to all of our episodes via the short URL of coffeechat.show.
Coffeechat.show. That's an exciting thing to have that short URL, isn't it?
Definitely is. So take a look at all of the videos in our playlist and join us next time. Remember to connect with us on Twitter and on our blog.
That's right. And goodbye from Microsoft Ignite 2019.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm going to do a test of our audio-visual system.
This is
We
only
now
a test,
have-
though.
We now have coffee. It isn't really coffee. It's tea
Don't
and
tell
water,
them that.
but it's the blooper reel. And sometimes you don't drink coffee. It's rare. This is another audio-visual test of the coffee chat on 365 Adoption Podcast.
365.
365, 365,
36.5.
360. I
60.
already said that.
Yes, you did.
Can we try that again?
Yeah. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Okay. All right, here we go. In 3,